Seth joined us today, and for several of our AFC members, you've heard me talk about Seth. I've had the great sort of pleasure and honor to listen to Seth and listen to Seth on different mastermind panels and sessions, and he leads a great successful team in the Baltimore area and is the owner of the market center in the White Marsh area. So thank you so much for being, with us today, and really appreciate your time. And some of the comments that I had sent to Seth that I thought would be helpful for those of us to hear today and learn from him would be to specifically listen to comments and thoughts about what is Seth doing as an owner of a sales team and owner of a market center to get them into kind of mode every day, to help them, coach them, guide them, lead them, build them up, lift them up. What is he kind of instructing them on as far as focus, and how is he energizing them and lift and helping them through some of these challenging times? So that was it in a nutshell, what I had sent to Seth, and it may be a tall order, but I think, Seth came back and said, sounds a lot like mindset. And so we're going to be kind of really diving into that. So with that, let me kind of turn it back over to you.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, glad to be here, guys. And here's what I would say. I would love for this to be as interactive as possible, which means if you can hear me, I'd love to be able to see you. I'd love for you guys to be able to see me. Well, you can probably see me regardless. I'd love to be able to see you. Let's make it fair. So turn on your video. Number two, feel free to either put comments or thoughts in the chat, any ahas, and let's go deeper into some of those. And we'll start on mindset and we'll figure out where it goes for the next little bit. I'm happy to talk to you guys about what it's like from a leadership perspective. I think what mindset looks like with clients. So I'm just going to start with a few different things. So first off, if you're anywhere near, if you've got paper, I'm going to give you a few things to draw. So oh shoot, is it going to work with the background or not? Yeah, there you go. Can you guys see that? It's 4 squares. You guys got that?
Yes.
Get a piece of paper and draw 4 squares. You're going to need to be able to write something inside of them. This is what you do when you don't have a PowerPoint, people. You got it?
Got it.
4 squares are not that hard. All right. So here's the first thing that I think about mindset. If you've got 4 squares, in the upper left square, I want you to write self-aware. The first thing that we've got to do is we've got to be self-aware with how our mindset is doing. We'll talk through this a little bit. I've actually, I've interviewed a couple psychologists lately for our clients. Like we've got a VIP Facebook group for our clients, VIP group, obviously for our office like you guys do. And I brought a couple psychologists on because I want to talk about, as people are going through trauma, which is what we are going through as a society right now, everybody handles it differently. And I have no idea where you are on this call, right? There's some days where I don't know where I am. And the first thing is, if we are gonna manage through the shift, the first thing we need to do is we need to be aware of how we're doing. Right? By the way, anybody with kids, anybody with a team, understand this is what I walk them through. The second thing under that, so self-aware was upper left. The bottom left, I want you to put self-manage. So, and this is about emotions, right? The bottom left is, if the upper left is, am I aware of my emotions? The bottom left is, do I know how to manage my emotions? In other words, when I'm in a crappy state, do I know what to do to get out of a crappy state? So I was with our kids, we're making dinner. This might've been about a week ago, and this will sound crass to you guys in a second, but you'll get the point. I was with our kids about a week ago, and we're making dinner, and they're all super cranky, and it goes from age 16 to 7. And we're talking about stuff, and I'm like, guys, did you get outside today? And then I asked this one, I go, what color is your pee? Now, why would I ask the question, what color is your pee? It's totally an inappropriate thing to talk about right now. Why would I ask that question?
Dehydrated.
Getting enough water.
Yeah, they're not getting enough water. I'd venture to guess 50% of the people on this call are not eating the way they eat when they're at their healthiest, and are not drinking the amount of water they drink when you're at your healthiest. Although Walt just grabbed a glass of something. So Walt, I couldn't tell because of the coloring. It was either margarita or water. I think it was water, right? And I'm in the same boat, right? Like it's as simple as do we know how to manage our state? We might go into a little Tony Robbins in here in a little bit as far as like the 3 things you'd focus on if you want to manage your state, but you have to first be self-aware to know how you're doing. Write down the phrase soul words. I'll type it in here. You could Google it later. Somebody could Google it now, soul words. It's going to be a whole list of emotions. I do this exercise with my family. I do this exercise with my teams. I would do this exercise with clients if it was appropriate and I needed to. And I would say, guys, what state are you in? Are you angry right now? Are you sad? Are you scared? What are you? Okay. So on the left side, or excuse me, on the right side, I want you to write aware of others. And anybody who wants to influence anyone, if you have a client that you want to influence, if you have a team member you want to influence, then this category matters a ton. Are you aware of how they are doing? Does anybody on here use the 5 stages of grief with their clients? Anybody use that?
No.
Put in the chat box if you do. If you're not, I'll give you a script. I'll give you basically my listing presentation, or at least a good portion of it that follows the 5 stages of grief. That's how I do my listing presentation right now. And awareness of others is key in that. And below that, it is, we won't say managing others, but how about we say influencing others? So if you wrote all those down, somebody put it in the chat box for me so they see, go top left, bottom left, top right, bottom right. But what I have, if you can kind of see my screen, if this Zoom background will make it easier. There we go. Well, I can't even see yours, but we're good. It's this idea of self-awareness. Are you aware of yourself? Below that, do you know how to manage yourself? Up above that, are you aware of others? And below that, do you know how to influence others? Which, by the way, this is sales 101. This is leadership 101. And this is sure as heck how to survive a shift. Right? It starts with the mindset. So somebody give me an aha from what we just talked about. You can write it or you can unmute and say it. Okay, Margie, thank you. Yes, aha, and I apologize. What I meant is, what is your aha from what we just talked about?
Oh, I'm sorry.
The 5 stages of grief, I think.
I like it. Then somebody give me a whoop whoop. All right. So I'd love to hear from anybody, either what's one of those categories that you've been doing well in, or what's one of those categories you're like, that's where I'm falling short, or that's the area that I want to focus on.
The 5 stages of grief for me is a concept I didn't think about employing in this time.
Okay. Well, okay, we'll go there next. I'll start to draw it. Somebody else on this self-awareness, self-management, awareness of others, management of others.
So I'll certainly share, at least from my perspective, the last, I would say, 4 weeks. In week 1, it was really, for me, it felt like it was more about being aware of others and trying to influence others. And what was being sacrificed was the self-awareness and self-management of myself. And so it probably took me until almost into kind of week 3 of this to snap out of it. And I can only be helpful to others if I am actually taking care of myself.
Guys, the left side is the oxygen mask. The left side is put your own oxygen mask on first. But the upper left corner is you don't even know that you're being deprived of oxygen right now. There's a phrase in psychology that talks about being dysregulated. We're either healthily regulated or we're dysregulated. And let me ask you this: who feels like in the past in the past week, if a 5, like take a scale of 0 to 10, and right in the middle is a 5, and you're like, I've just been even keel, everything's been good. And then I want you to tell us if you've been closer to a 0, we'll go this direction, a 0 as like, I felt tired, I felt exhausted, I felt like giving up, I felt despair, despondency, or a 9 or 10, which is like, I'm just angry. I'm I'm pissed off, I'm nervous, I've got a bunch of energy and I don't know what to do about that. So who would put themselves at somewhere either near a 1, 2, or 3 or an 8, 9, or 10?
For me, it depends on the time of day.
Right, it does. That's right, it does.
Yeah.
Tommy, I see I'm closer to a 10. Buddy, that's I feel like where I live most of my life. And what I realize is, guys, anytime that we are not in the middle, our behaviors are our body's way of re-regulating to the middle. If you've been drinking more alcohol in the past 4 or 5 weeks than is normal for you, that's part of your body's regulation of this. There's healthy ways to regulate and there's unhealthy ways to regulate, right? If you've been sleeping more, that might be healthier. It might have gone to a place of like unhealthy, just sleeping in more, right? I just read something by Ben Hardy saying, guys, for the next 30 days, wake up at 5 a.m., right? If you aren't working out helps you get re-regulated. If you are normally working out and for the past 4 weeks, you've just been slacking off, like this is about getting back into a regulated state. And I promise you, we are no good for our clients if we ourselves are not clear on our emotions and our mindset. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I love to see some of those 5s. So I'll just tell you this, the exercise that I just walked you guys through, I talk through with my team at the market center level and on my sales team on a regular basis, because I need them to be able to influence clients. And you understand, nobody is going to be in touch with somebody else's emotions until they are in touch with their own emotions. And nobody is going to be able to influence others' emotions until they know how to influence themselves. Right? Is anybody, I feel like a caged animal. Yeah. Yeah, I get it. Does anybody know Tony Robbins' perspective on, you guys might love Tony Robbins or you might hate him. I'm kind of indifferent to that, but I'll at least tell you what he says. If you draw a triangle, because this is KW and we love triangles, I'll tell you what to put on each side of the triangle. Here's the idea. Can you all see this? I got a triangle, and at the bottom it says physiology. Somebody can type this in the chat box so you can read it. On the left side it says focus, and on the right side it says meaning. And here's what that means. When I need to make a decision in business, or let's put it this way, if I have a home inspection that I need to get to a seller and the seller's feeling beat up, do I send him the home inspection at night or in the morning?
In the morning.
You guys get that? Like that is as simple as it gets of like helping to influence the state of others is actually giving them a hard decision to make when they're better rested. To make a tough, to see something, right? If I've got a low ball offer, but I think it's honestly the highest offer somebody's going to get, I don't send it to them late at night. Like I tell them, I schedule a conversation for first thing in the morning. So here's the 3 things that I look at whenever I'm feeling like I'm not at my best or a team member isn't at their best. I go through these 3 things, right? So physiology, we actually talked about it before, right? Are you getting exercise? Are you getting outside? Are you getting fresh air? Are you seeing sunshine? Are you drinking water? Like, how is your physiology? Full disclosure, I've sucked at working out the past 4 weeks. I've gotten back into it in the past week or so, but that's been a real struggle for me. Like I can tell it's my body's way of kind of dealing with dysregulation, right? I'm having a lot of grace for myself right now. And at the same time, I'm aware of that. So physiology is number 1. The second thing is focus. And with focus, you have to decide right now what you're going to focus on. Right? I mean, there's 100 bold laws on this, right? Where your focus goes, like your energy flows, like what you focus on expands. You can read enough Inman articles right now to make you think that nothing is going right. And you can find enough success stories right now to see opportunity in everything. And I'll show you another. Does anybody use yin yang in their presentation? The yin yang symbol. No? All right, I got more shapes for you. I feel like this is a coloring class with Seth Dailey today. A second. Okay. So focus was number 2, and then meaning was number 3. Meaning is the idea that everything we're talking about, guys, is a story. Every news article is being spun. Everything from Keller Williams is being spun. Everything from Bridget is being spun. Everything from me is being spun. And sure as heck, everything out of your mouth is being spun, right? We are making up stories all the time, right? A classic one is this happening for you or is this happening to you? That's all a story. It is all a perspective, a state of mind, right? You can go right now and find enough amazing things happening in the world, or you can go find a bunch of stuff that's terrible in the world. But let me show you a couple more shapes that we use. So I talked about 5 stages of grief. Here's what I would be saying to a seller. And I love drawing stuff on a napkin when I'm at a listing presentation, or now I'll do it a little bit differently if I'm doing stuff by Zoom, we actually do the majority of our stuff by Zoom and have for a while. But I'll say, guys, right now, selling a house is like going through the 5 stages of grief. And usually after the word grief, I'll kind of cross it out and I'll write the word loss, right? Here's the reality. Are you guys still seeing the frothy tip of the market?
Yeah.
Like, I know we're in a slightly different market. Well, where's the market where you guys are? Are we going down? Are we still going up? Are we at the top? Are we at the bottom?
Even, I think.
Say again?
Even.
Sorry, I actually couldn't hear that. Say it one more time.
Even.
We're even.
The same.
So
the buyers are
it's like a photograph,
right?
But even doesn't tell me momentum.
Okay.
So are we right? If you, in other words, if somebody sends you a picture of their bank account and it has $10,000 in it, and you say, is this good or bad? The answer is we don't know. The real question is, well, last week was it 5,000 or last week was it 50,000? That shows us momentum. So when we're talking about the market with clients, we always want to talk momentum, right? And where's it going? So we have pent up momentum. Top. Okay, so I think what I'm hearing, guys, is that some people are saying it's at the top. Some people are saying when all of this coronavirus thing settles down, we think there's still going to be a crest to this wave. And maybe that's true. I personally, in our market, I think that we're still going to see some bidding wars. Like, I think we still have some momentum. My personal opinion is, like, we got funded with the grant, the SBA loan. And that delayed letting go of any staff for at least 2 months. And that's fantastic. And I think that in terms of the national economy, that is going to delay everything that happens by 2 to 3 months. Because employers are like, man, if I can hold out, this is great. What I'm really wondering about is what's going to happen in 2 to 3 months after that. And if we're still in a lull, right? If we end up getting a market recession, if the market begins to recede and we were at the top and we start going down the other side, I'm going to be using this script as often as possible. And the answer is, I'll just tell people that that this market is like going through the 5 stages of grief, because there's immediately going to be this perspective between what I hoped I would get and what I'm actually going to get. If you guys want to see our seller profile, you could go to the website. I'll just type it in here, www.readytosellsmart.com. Please don't fill it out. But you can take a look at it. Y'all wouldn't be the first to borrow it. So do what you want to do. One of the questions that I ask in there, we will start to use as the market shifts. And we wrote this question in the last shift. And the question is, we would say to people, what do you think your house was worth at the peak of the last market? And the next question down says, what do you think it's worth today? Now, why would I ask those questions in that way?
To gauge their mindset.
Gauge your mindset, absolutely.
Be more honest so they don't sound ridiculous.
Yeah, even the framing of it, right? If you ask people 2 questions back to back, it gives them context for the second question, right? If I say, what did you think your house was worth at the peak of the last market? And they put in an answer, or I say it verbally, and then I say, and what do you think it's worth today? It's almost unnatural for somebody to give you a number that is there or higher, right? And you understand that whatever that gap is, that is them starting to process through the 5 stages of grief. So does anybody know what the 5 stages of grief are? All right, phone a friend. Anybody else?
Denial, anger.
Any takers?
Depression.
5 stages of grief?
Well, we
All right.
can't hear you very well.
You can't hear me?
No, we couldn't hear Walt very well. If you were
Oh.
speaking out.
Walt, you want to go?
Denial,
Denial?
anger,
Are you Googling?
bargaining,
No.
depression, acceptance.
Are you cheating?
Yes.
Right? Awesome. Good job. So here's, oh, thanks. Whoever wrote that in there. Way to go.
Hey, if you guys don't,
So here's what I'll explain, guys. I will explain that selling your house, again, if your market isn't here yet, that's fine. I will tell you, I use this in almost every market, okay? Because I've almost never met a seller that didn't have a gap between what they thought their house was worth and what they wanted to get and what they're actually going to get. So I'll explain it like this. I'll say selling your house is like going through the 5 stages of grief, because whether you're kicking yourself for wishing you had sold at the peak of the market, wishing that you could have timed it perfectly or not, the reality is there is a sense of loss in this conversation. I came in here, we sat down, we looked at the comparables together, and you were hoping you would get this, and you're realizing now that you're more likely to get something less than that. And let me walk you through the 5 stages of grief, and I'll literally take out the back of a piece of paper and I'll start to write this. And I'll say the first thing that a seller will go through is some version of depression, of denial, right? Those comparables don't matter. Those houses aren't like mine. That house was a foreclosure. That was a divorce sale. They needed to sell, right? There's going to be some version of denial. Second is there's going to be some part of anger. And I'm just giving you guys my scripts right now. And you might be angry at yourself for not selling sooner. You might be angry at yourself for buying when you bought. If I helped them buy, I might say, you might be angry at me. You might be angry at me that we bought this house when we bought this house. You could be angry at your neighbor who let their house go in a foreclosure or a short sale and that impacted your value. You can be angry at a lot of things, but I promise you, you will go through a stage of anger. And the third thing is bargaining. And when a seller wants to bargain in the market, they are going to price their home for negotiation, not competition. Do you know what I mean? So if there's 2 types of sellers, there's sellers that will price their home for competition and sellers that will price their home for negotiation. And the seller that prices their home for negotiation prices it up here and says, somebody make me an offer. And here's what I would tell you. And by the way, we could go into stats. We could pull up some, we can pull up some smart charts. We use the RB Intel, getsmartcharts.com. I use a ton of stuff from that in a listing presentation if they're a data person. But I would say, what I want you to do, you don't even have to tell me the number. But if you feel like you are pricing your home for negotiation, you're just hoping somebody will make you an offer, I want you in your head to think of the number at which you would say, I wouldn't like this number, but I could live with it because it would help my family move on. And I want to take that number and I want you to add 3% to it. And whatever that is, we should not be priced any higher than that. Because on average, houses are selling for 97 cents on the dollar.
Really?
And if you price much over 3%, then the reality is you're not going to be the house that sells. You're going to be the house that sells the house that sells. Because next to them, they're going to look like a good deal. And you're going to look, you're going to be overpriced, and it's going to make them look like a good deal. Okay. But after, by the way, bargaining would also come into play with condition, right? Anytime you're wanting to bargain with the buyer, this is also when I'll deal with a commission objection. You might want to bargain with me right now. You might want to say, it's too expensive to sell a house. Totally get it. I completely understand how frustrated you are in this market. It is like going through the 5 stages of grief. And Mr. Seller, where I'm really concerned about is I don't want you to end up in stage 4, because stage 4 is depression. And the clinical definition of depression would be inaction. And usually then I'll pull up a chart and I will explain days on market. Now, I don't know what days on market is like for you guys, but here's the way that I can explain it. And what was your question? Did you say 3% over? Over. So in other words, if somebody says to me, I want to price my house at $450, and I think the value of the house is $410, I might say to them, out of curiosity, what's the lowest price that you would accept? And let's say they said, I would accept $410. My statement would be, $410 at 3% of $410 would be about $12,000. And I would say the highest we should be priced is $425. If we're pricing much over 3% of what we think fair market value is, we are pricing for negotiation and hoping somebody makes us a lowball offer. Okay. You're going to be the house that sells the house that sells, right? 2 types of houses, Dennis. The house that sells and the house that sells the house that sells. Let me go back. So depression. So I'll explain days on market, and I'll explain that on average, if a house is priced right and in good condition, you, Mr. Seller, are going to be on and off the market in 3 weeks, 14 to 21 days. But that's if we're priced right and in good condition. And the reality is, I have no idea. I said that once, let me back up. Once someone gets to acceptance, you're going to be on and off the market in 2 to 3 weeks. But Mr. Seller, Mrs. Seller, I have no idea how long it's going to take you to process through the 5 stages of grief. And if you see another property on the market that has been on longer than that time period, now you know that you can look at them and say, oh, they're grieving. They're just processing through the 5 stages of grief, because they are. All right, I'm gonna pause there. I was maybe a bit of a fire hose. I'd love to hear some feedback. I'm happy to talk through any bits of that are helpful. My self-esteem is based on questions, guys. So when you don't ask them, I feel really crappy about myself. Just putting that out there.
I really like that last line that Dennis just wrote into that chat box there. That it's a great way to explain, as you said, kind of that the overpriced listing there. And yeah, I thought that was it's an interesting kind of conversation to be able to have with that seller. Kind of puts it in perspective for them. Do they really want to be the house that's going to help sell their next door neighbor's house, or do they want to be the one that ends up being the one that's sold?
Sure.
Helps uncover some of that motivation, I suppose.
Yeah.
For them.
Yeah. Does anybody feel like they have a seller right now that when you look at it, you're like, I see exactly where they're trapped in that cycle? Walt, I see you nodding your head. What are you saying there?
And I have some people that just have a certain goal in mind, but it's just not there. And I keep trying to talk to them, and the wife is just like, no, we recently received an offer after 6 months, and I was excited, and the wife's going, well, no, it's just not meant to be, and I'd keep trying to talk to her about reducing the price.
Yeah.
And she is just saying, it's a God thing. The right person.
Yeah. I went to school, and one of my degrees is in theology, so I thought I was going to be a pastor. And so I ended up working with a lot of pastors, and God bless them. I love them. And I love, like, if it's meant to be, God will sell this house. Well, that might be true, but God brought me here to price it right, and y'all need to price it right. Anytime I hear somebody that says some version of a passive, if it's meant to be, it'll happen. That's a version of they're stuck in depression. Clinically, they are in inaction. They're letting the market, they're being reactive to the market instead of being in acceptance of, this is what it is. Do we want to sell or do we not want to sell? By the way, another script I'll use in this is, guys, on a scale of 1 to 10, how motivated are you to sell your home? Right? And they'll give me an answer. And the answer predictably is going to be a 6 or 7, somewhere in there, right? And maybe even I'll say, well, write it down. And then before they say it, I'll preemptively give them the answer so they know how to frame what they just said. I'll say, there's a couple types of sellers right now, but just understand that in this market, the only things that are selling from a motivation level are sellers that are at an 8, 9, or a 10. A 10 is a foreclosure. A 10 is an auction. The bank does not want to own the property. They are going to sell it. They're going to get it off of their books at whatever price they need to. And Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if I was at a 7 or below right now, I might decide this isn't the right time to sell. Because you're not going to get your price when you're competing with other sellers whose motivation is an 8, 9, or 10. In other words, the sellers that are going to sell right now are the sellers that have to sell, not the sellers that want to sell. Right? And then we talk through the scripting on the other side of how you take interest rates and you flip it, that it's still a good time to buy, et cetera. Okay? Tommy, I'm going to check something out real quick to explain that. Let me see if I have access. Delmar. Give me just a second.
Seth, are you part of Bright?
I am. Yep. I'm pulling it up right now. Let me just see if there's anything I can tell you about this. Mate. Sure. This might be interesting teaching. Hang on, guys. Let me share my screen. All right. Can you guys see this chart?
Yes.
Does anybody know how I get here? Do you guys use this at all?
Yes.
This is so getsmartcharts.com. I went and I typed in the zip code. I went down and I picked the monthly report. My listing presentation will usually include this chart for the zip code. And then I'll also go back a year. Sometimes I'll go back a lot longer than a year. In fact, just for kicks, I'm going to do this right now, and I'm going to go back a year, and let's see what it says. Who knows? So here's the way that I explain this chart. I will. Can you guys see the full screen? I need to hide my video here. Can you guys kind of see the whole screen?
Yes.
Or I should say, can you see full left to right? Is it cutting anything off? Left to right? Think we're good?
No, you're
Okay.
centered.
All right, cool. So Tommy or anybody else can play along with me. Actually, shoot, I don't need to go back a year right now because I can just look at it on here. It has year-over-year data. I'll go back further though if they bought the house 5 years ago or whatever. So somebody help me out here. How many properties sold in March? All right, first I need a volunteer who knows these charts well, because we'll move quickly through it, but I want others to be able to follow around.
Looks like 8.
Okay, you're right. 8 properties sold in March 2020, right? How many properties sold March 2019? 3. What was our average days on market?
41.
41. So this is when I'll have a conversation with folks. And again, all of this for me, I literally have all I've drawn for them so far is the 5 stages of grief. And then I'll have a conversation about days on market, and I'll explain it this way. Days on market is an average days on market. True? So what was the average days on market that you saw?
41.
41. So what people think, you guys can see my screen or see what I'm drawing here. It's like a distribution chart, right? And you think that somewhere in the middle is 41. Does that mean that half the properties sold before 41 days and half sold after?
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. If one house took a day to sell and one took a week to sell and one took a year to sell, and then you go look in your newspaper, okay, if that's the data, one house took a day, one house took a week, and one house took a year, what's the average days on market? You guys are getting math at 2 in the afternoon.
124 days.
What's that?
124 days.
That's right. It's about 4 months, right? Because you just add them all up and divide by 3. But here's what's asinine about that number. There's not one house on here that took 4 months to sell. And this is what sellers need to understand, right? I give them the Mark Twain quote. There are lies, there are damned lies, and then there are statistics. So here's the problem, Mr. Seller. When you tell me that you're going to be patient because you think you have 41 days to sell your house, but you don't, because the market in real estate always looks like, thank you, Mike, you win the math contest. The difference, good Lord, come on. Hang on, let me just get off of a background. All right, it's a long tail curve. I don't know if that is looking the right way, if it's looking reverse on the image, right?
Yeah.
In other words, a bunch of houses sell really quick, and there's this one goober that took a year to sell, which drags out the average, okay? Now, let's look at what we just looked at, and I'll show you where you see that. So look, 8 properties sold, average days on market is 41. But Mr. Seller, Mrs. Seller, here's what I want you to understand. 3 out of 8 properties were on and off the market in 10 days. Does that make sense? 3 out of 10 properties were on and off the market within 10 days. That's what, about 40%, give or take? Which means if we want to be the ones that sell quickly, we've got to be priced right and in good condition. Does that make sense, guys?
Yep.
Usually when I will explain that to somebody, we can immediately get to a conversation about getting past depression and explaining how their neighbors were depressed, which is why it took them 4 to 6 months or 6 months to a year to sell. All right, let me pause there. Any ahas or thoughts when you're sort of looking at that? Bridget, this is like a junk drawer of random things to talk about today.
I know. Yeah, that's okay. I think that what's interesting is, so Tommy gave you a zip code that is in an area of our market that I guess some would say is more of like a primary residential market.
Yep.
And in our area, we cover both spectrums. We have a primary residential market, and then we have a second home market. And so on this call, much like our population of agents as well as buyers and sellers, is we've got both. And what I think right now, probably today, what we're seeing is there's still, while the activity has probably slowed up a bit in the primary residential market, we probably have more consistency right now in that market than we are probably in the beach and second home market, I would say overall. But that site that you just went to, that's a really great that's a really great tool. And it sounded as though some people on here have used it and have been to it before, but I think it was probably something new for many others on this call. So that's a really great tool. And the way you explained it was also really good too. Helpful.
Let me give you one more thing about this chart, right? Because people think that days on market or absorption rate happens in a market, right? Like there's 8 properties sold, average days on market is 41, but the reality is everything happens in price ranges. So let's look at the market here between 200,000 and 300,000 compared to the market between 300,000 and 500,000. Okay, so take a look at this. How many properties sold between 200,000 and 300,000 in the past month? Detached. Well, it won't matter, but detached.
About 7.
1, plus 3 is 4. 4 properties sold in the last month, right? How many were available at the end of the month? This is how I'll explain it to a seller. And I've got my cursor on the answer.
7.
Somebody help me out.
7.
7, thank you. Bridget, you're wonderful. So here's the deal, guys. That's less than 2 months supply of inventory. You guys get that? There's 7 available for sale. That's like there's 7 rolls of toilet paper at Costco, and there's 4 buyers that buy the toilet paper every day. Right? How many days worth of toilet paper do they have? This is absorption rate, which is a terrible pun talking about toilet paper. Now let's look between 3 and 500,000. In fact, for this one, I'd actually say 3 and you could go 3 to 4, 3 to 6. I'll use 3 to 6 because it'll make it a really, really dramatic point even more as we go out. But look at 3 to 400,000. How many properties were available or how many properties sold?
1.
1. How many were available to sell between 3 and 600,000?
10.
10. That means that there is a 10-month supply of inventory in that price bracket where there is 2 months supply of inventory in the price bracket between 2 and 300,000. And I'll use that if a seller's perspective, if they go back to bargaining. Because here's what bargaining is going to sound like. Bargaining sounds like if you would do more with marketing, my house would sell. No. Me doing something with marketing isn't going to have a difference on your house. In fact, if I got the Goodyear blimp and put it over your house and I drove traffic to your house, somebody would come and see it. And then because it's overpriced, we go back to the previous script. There's the houses that sell and there's the houses that sell the houses that sell. So even if I drive traffic to your house, it's going to cause the most appropriately priced property to sell. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right, let me give you guys one more and then we'll do a little Q&A and you guys have questions. So everybody know what this sign is?
Yin and yang.
Yin and yang. So we, since 2008 in our buyer presentation, almost the very first page, and so the very first set of questions is that image. And here's the quote that I use. You guys can Google it. It's a John F. Kennedy quote, at least the way I've heard it. And he says, the Chinese use 2 brush strokes to write the word crisis. One stands for danger. Yes, KW has a blimp. One stands for danger and one stands for opportunity. Let's go back to the top. The Chinese have 2 brush strokes to write the word crisis. Are we in a crisis?
Yes.
Yes, we are in a crisis, right? One stands for danger, one stands for opportunity. In the danger, or in the opportunity, be aware of the danger, and in the danger, be aware of the opportunity. And then I'll ask them the question, what about this market makes you want to buy now?
Interest rates are low.
Sure, and I'll get a whole list of questions for them. And if they don't bring up interest rates, I'll bring it up for them. Hey, by the way, you haven't even mentioned interest rates. What do you know about interest rates right now? But I'll get whatever their answers are. And then I'll ask, and what about this? What are your biggest fears or concerns about this market? But when I frame for a buyer that in the midst of every crisis, there is danger and there is opportunity, I'm literally enabling them to find the opportunity that they want. You're helping, they want to buy. They would not be on the phone call with you if they did not want to buy. They need to be led through that process. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right, I'm gonna pause there for now. It's a 12:50 or 1:50? I'm in a different time zone.
150.
1:50, okay. Questions, comments, funny jokes.
Well, refrain.
I'd love to hear what you guys got out of this or what your brains are doing.
I plan to use that getsmartcharts.com. So many times I think we're thinking we have to reinvent the wheel and put a lot of time and effort in our own charts. It's so nice to see something that's not going to take so much of our time, because that's one of our most precious resources, to use our time wisely. So thanks for that tip. I'm going to use that.
Great. There's a lot of resources on that website. What's one of the scripts or dialogues you guys feel like you could integrate with at least one of your clients?
Of what you talked about?
Yeah, preferably, or not.
Preferably. I'm just going to throw it all out the door. I like the 3%, taking that and adding the 3% to it. That one is a good one. I would think someone would be able to add. And I think I saw Barbara write it in there, and she probably just said it as well. And relying on the data and putting it in front of them. I think I was watching a listing presentation that Abe Shreve did recently, where you come and you kind of put it in front of them and let them be the ones to make that decision, as opposed to you sort of telling them, let them sort of self-discover and tell you. You can put it in front of them and lead them to water, yet by giving them that data kind of takes the emotion out of it and puts that decision in their court.
And Bridget, I use something else when we pull our CMA through Bright, but if I would just have this page in front of me and I was trying to justify the 97% number, I would just circle this 99.5% on here, and that would be the justification I would provide at that moment. Why I'm saying 3% over.
Yeah.
In other words, there's not a huge discount when stuff sells right now. There almost never is between list price at time of sale and actual sales price.
So when you're talking with I want to kind of come back if I can. So are you actively having these kinds of conversations right now with any and all of your sellers right now, as far as readjustment, things of that nature? Are you doing that right now?
Absolutely. And like that yin yang symbol, guys, when I meet with my buyer's agents and I talk through their pipeline, I am actually like that concept of what are their biggest fears and what do they see as the opportunity. That is the motivation conversation. And I know that they did a good buyer consult. I know that they actually got the answer that's going to move a buyer forward if they uncovered motivation. And the way you uncover motivation is figuring out what is it in this market that you see as an opportunity for you? What is it about this time that for you is an opportunity? And then vice versa, what are your biggest fears or concerns? It's their motivation and their objections in one picture that they can remember. So I'll talk with my buyer's agents or for my own buyers. I mean, I'm probably doing about 5 consults a week right now by Zoom. And I know that I got it right if at the end of the buyer consult, I can explain that. And by the way, I'll use it with the seller consult too. Somebody comes to me right now thinking about selling. I'll say, I'll use yin yang. We're in a crisis. What is it about right now that is the opportunity for you to sell? And what are your biggest fears or concerns about the selling process? 5 stages of grief. We on our pipeline call, my team is very aware of the concept of this person is in bargaining mode. They think the reason their home didn't sell is because we didn't do an open house last weekend. No, it's not why your house didn't sell. Right? They're overpriced or the market is longer term, right? If you guys are in a second home market, it would take me a little bit to get used to it, but I just realign my numbers with what the market is. The point is get to acceptance, get to what is the reality of the market.
And Seth, how are your, want to kind of move off of this if I could, in particular, you've got about a half a dozen agents on your sales team?
Yeah, I'd say three that are in production, 3 newbies.
Okay. And what are some of the things, for example, that you're saying to some of your newer agents that haven't experienced a shift say, in the market, and how are you helping them kind of right now in particular? Just
So and there's some tremendous opportunities right now. So number one, get in touch with your database and then figure out if the size of that database needs to grow or not. If I was doing a litmus test with a new agent or anybody on this call, I would ask you the question of how many transactions you want to do by referral this year. So somebody give me a number of how many transactions they'd like to do. You might have other sources, but from your database, how many transactions would you like to do? You type a number in or unmute and say something. 30. Awesome. Thanks, Tommy. So Tommy, to do 30 transactions out of a database, I think you need 300 people. Andrew, I think you need 750 people that you reach out to more consistently than anybody else. You might have a tribe from Boomtown ads or Facebook leads or whatever of 10,000, 20,000 like we do. But at the end of the day, 75 deals are going to come from referrals that come from 750 raving fans. And the reality is inside of that 750, there's going to be 20% of it, or around 150, that are really going to be the key figures. So we're calling those people right now, and I'm using a concept from a book called Love is the Killer App. It's an old book. You guys might want to find it. Love is the Killer App. It's by a guy named Tim Sanders, written about 10, maybe 15 years ago now. And he says this: share your knowledge, share your network, and always be human. In other words, share your compassion. And right now, in our world, what I'm doing is not asking for referrals. It is sharing our knowledge, right? And if you guys say, well, there's a ton of information out there. Of course there's information. There will always be information. What they're missing is wisdom. What they're missing is curating the information. They're missing the analysis of it. That's what you guys bring. It's not that they can't see Zillow. It's that they don't know when Zillow's wrong. Right? They see what the listing says, but they don't see what the listing should say that it doesn't say. That's the difference between wisdom and information. But share your knowledge, share your network. If there was ever a time to start sharing networks, right? Just when we realized that having a small business banker mattered was when we all tried to get SBA loans. And we realized, crap, I got nobody. And if you've got one, share your network right now. And then share your compassion, or always be human. Jason Abrams said it, so let me just quote him, right? You can use the Adele script right now. Like, hello, how are you? That is all that the call needs to be to center in on where people are. We are going to win a mind share battle right now to win a market share battle whenever the market picks back up. Does that help, Bridget? Anybody else? Any other questions? Oh, Bridget, you're muted. It's like so quiet. It's so awkward.
Sorry. I was asking, for your team right now, are you using the applets within Command, such as campaigns and the smart plans? Are you using those, or do you use something different?
Yeah. So the number one thing that we're using inside of Command, I'm a huge fan of opportunities. And I'd say if you're not using Command at all and you're looking for a place to start, the two places that I would start is I would get everybody in as an opportunity. And I would start from the right to the left. In other words, when they go under contract, put them in Command if you're not using it at all. And work your way to where all of the opportunities are in Command. I'll just give you guys a real quick example. We're at the top of the hour, so I understand people will probably drop off. Bridget, I'll stand for 5 more minutes if that helps, if you want me to share any of this. Let me just show you guys. I'll share my Command with you. So there's a couple things that I do. One is the number, and we're still adapting to Command. I wouldn't say that we're all the way there, but the number one thing that we do is we use opportunities, maybe. And I'm just going through a series of questions with people. Like I look at if they have the dollar amount in. So if I find, like, let's take this person right here, right? The fact is dollar amount and a proposed settlement date, that's what I'm looking for. I'm actually looking for it further back. Like candidly, if we look at, let's take this seller who has completed a consult and hasn't done anything yet. And here's what I know. Okay, I know about the price range of the house, but I don't have a date of when they really need to sell. And what that tells me is that I actually missed a motivation conversation with the seller. So I'm actually using command in 2 little fields, projected settlement date and price range, to know if I had clear conversations with the seller. And when we look at this screen, like this is the screen that helps you understand what your race is going to look like for the year. There's a lot of perspectives of where the market is going to go this year. One perspective is we're gonna drop off a cliff. Another perspective is market's gonna be okay, and we're just gonna do in 9 months what we normally would do in 12. I don't have a clue. What I do know is I'm going to keep feeding the left side of this funnel. I'm gonna keep watching them push through, and then I'm gonna look for clogs in the pipeline. Like, can we be real candid, guys? What are the clogs in my pipeline as you look at this? Clog number 1 is I've had people that I've had appointments with, but for whatever reason, they're not on the market. What's the coaching that I give my team and myself around that? What can we do to move them to a virtual showing environment? Clog number 2, we've got a ton of buyers that are active, that are out there searching, but we haven't gotten them under contract. That's a motivation conversation.
Great. Yeah, that's great. I will say, I think that a lot of our classes and training right now have been about showing folks how to use opportunities from the standpoint of how to actually do the deal, right? Do the transaction, actually do the listing, do the sales agreement, as opposed to using opportunities for what you just showed, and using it from that standpoint to kind of look at your business, whether it's coaching people within your team or looking at, if you're a single agent, looking at your own pipeline there and moving people, as you say, from left to right. So that you're one of the first to kind of share that with us. That's using it for that reason. So that's helpful. Thank you.
Cool. Awesome.
Thank you. Thanks, Seth.
All right, guys. Have a great day. Take care.
Thank you. You too. Thanks, Seth.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you, Seth.